So, I want to talk about New Year's resolutions. And when I say New Year's, I'm going to call it the calendar New Year. Because if you were to follow the cycles of nature or even astrology, if you will, if you're interested, the new year wouldn't really be until the spring equinox. And I think this is an interesting thing to look at because we are setting up a calendar new year and we're creating resolutions which a lot of people find really hard to stick to, and there's a reason for that. So I want to dive into what that's all about and maybe the differences between resolutions and intentions and falling more into harmony with the rhythm of nature. This is Corinne Bloom, and you're listening to Raw Conversations. All right, so let's begin with the rhythms of nature. So if you think about the winter solstice as a time of, firstly, it's the beginning of winter. Like we are in the dead of winter right now. Some places winter hasn't even completely hit. But the winter solstice is it's a time to plant seeds. And you are nurturing the soil. Like we are really in the soil of our being. We're in the darkness. We're in the more introverted inward time of year, more yin, more feminine. We're in the death cycle. Like winter is the shedding of the leaves, the shedding of what no longer serves us. It's the death cycle, and we are kind of tilling the soil or nurturing the soil and planting the seeds of our intentions for what we would like to have emerge into the world once spring arrives. The spring equinox, which really is the true marker of the new year, because that's when life is reborn. And there's the energy that supports that, the energy that supports growth and emergence out into the world. The energy goes back outward. The days are longer. So there's this whole... Can you see that looking at it through the cycle and the rhythm of nature, we are still in a very inward, quiet, restful time of the year. And so when you look at modern society and having New Year's, the calendar New Year, January 1st, December 31st, January 1st, it is so not the time to go outwards, to be extroverted, to be yang, to create and put things out there and have that kind of like, yes, I'm going to create this resolution and I'm going to stick to it. And most people burn out because there isn't the energy. We're not supported energetically in this time to put things out into the world. We're supported to cultivate ideas, to plant the seeds, as I said, to contemplate, to reflect, to go inwards, and to also just really rest. It's just a time of resting. We're recharging. So if modern society is like, nope, January 1st, plow ahead, get your resolutions. And then the thing is, what happens with resolutions is that they can be really inspiring and motivating. It can create a great, fresh new start, which is wonderful. I remember my Buddhist teacher in my 20s, Jack Kornfield, used to always say, you can always begin again. Like any day you can begin again. And New Year's is really just more of a collective reminder or invitation that we can do that. But with that can come a certain kind of pressure or expectation. And if you don't have a New Year's resolution, then something might be wrong with you, or if you don't meet your resolution, then you failed. There's a pressure. I mean, how many of you feel that there's a pressure or there's an expectation? And what I've seen, at least, is when we have expectations, they often come hand in hand with disappointment because expectations are very rigid. We have an idea of what they should look like rather than letting them kind of organically unfold, or for life to surprise you, or just to also be in a bit of an act of trust and surrender versus needing to control in a very linear fashion what your life should look like. And I always think about what Ram Dass said, that you can plant the seed and you can make sure that the soil is well kept, that it gets water, that it has sunshine, but you cannot force the flower to grow. And, he used that analogy in parenting, which I 1,000,000% agree with. But I also think that's true to anything. Like, our intentions are really connecting to what does our heart desire? What do we want to experience? Because that's really what life is. It's just experience after experience after experience. And they give us, all these experiences give us the opportunity to get to know ourselves more, to understand our relationships better, to just observe and witness and be aware of this crazy experience we call life and what it is to be human. And, I could go really deep into that. Some of you might not care, but then I don't think you'd probably be listening to this podcast. But you know what I mean? It's like this constant unfolding and unfurling cyclical experience. And there really is no should or shouldn't, and there is no kind of expectation, and there's no black and white, and it's not rigid and it's not linear. And I think actually the more, I'll say from my own experience as I grow older, the more that I try to plan rigidly my life, the less it works and kind of the more stressful it is. And it makes me think of there's the joke, how do you make God laugh? You tell him your plans. And it's basically just to say that, we plan things, and then the kind of cosmic joke is life doesn't go according to plan because it's just simply not that rigid or limited. Like, actually, it's so much more limitless, and there's so much more opportunity and possibility than we give credit, because most often our beliefs are keeping us in a very, very narrow paradigm. And so there's actually so much more to life that we could experience, but are we allowing it is the question. So the challenges with resolutions are two. I'm going to just reiterate, there are two things. One is that a resolution can be, I'm not saying it is, but it can come out as an expectation. And an expectation can lead to disappointment. It's just sometimes a bit too rigid. And then what happens is that we feel like shit because we feel like we failed at fulfilling our resolution. And that's not really helpful, right? That's an expectation. It's a pressure. The second thing is that we're doing it in a time of year where society is forcing us to be very extroverted, external, goal-orientated, kind of moving forward and out and ahead in a time where the rhythm of nature is the complete opposite. Inward, resting, contemplative, planting the seeds, setting the intention, tilling the soil, making, oh my God, I can't talk today. Sorry, folks. Making sure that the soil of your being is well nurtured, because that's going to be the foundation for any growth, which will come during spring and summer. And we kind of skip foundation. Like, I work a lot around relationship, and people skip the whole beginning kind of foundation part of, you can't build a house on, gravel. Like, you need to have a really good solid foundation so that you have a solid house that has longevity, right? It lasts, or that that it's healthy and strong. So you can say that to anything that you want to create in your life, any experience, any intention that you have. Does it have a good solid foundation? Is it coming from well nurtured and well-loved soil? And so this is the time, more than being really extroverted and, reaching your goals. There's nothing wrong with goals. I just don't resonate with that particular word, but, we're all different and we all have to tune into what feels right for us. But instead of feeling like you have to reach those now, by January 31st, like your New Year's resolutions must be fulfilled, or even just like even if it doesn't have a deadline, but that if it has that kind of linear trajectory, and that you need to be out there doing it right now, and then you find, God, I'm tired. God, this feels stressful. I feel like I'm falling behind. I feel like I'm falling short. You feel the pressure. You feel the expectation. Can that be an invitation to let go of that perspective? Let go of that rigid resolution or goal. Let go of the expectation that it has to be done now. Let go of that yang, very extroverted energy if it's making you feel tired and pressured and like you're beginning to feel like a failure because you're not meeting the requirements of that resolution. Be kind and gentle to yourself. Recognize that it's winter. Look out at nature. It's cold. The leaves aren't on the trees. There's no, everything is gestating, and everything needs that gestation period. The seed needs that gestation period to emerge. The caterpillar needs that time in the cocoon before it can emerge as a butterfly. A baby is in the womb for 9 months before it can come out. That gestation period is so important. And I think we step over that part in our society. Our society is so that, I've talked about this in previous podcasts, it's always wanting to move forward in that upward curve, right? Economic growth. It's like bigger, better, more. And actually, if we don't look at life linearly and we look at it cyclically, this is the death period. This is the shedding. This is the time to rest. This is the time to go inward. This is the time to cultivate the soil. And we need that. We need that break. We need that rest because we can't just go. What does that do to us? It makes us tired. It makes us over-adrenalized. It eventually makes people depressed because it's just too much. And there's so much wisdom to the resting periods in between. And even though, come spring and summer, the energy is externalized and it's extroverted, even within those periods, there are cycles, and you could look at the moon. There's the growth, there's the waxing and the waning. So there's constant death and rebirth, but there's just larger, I guess you could say there's greater energy that supports one form or another throughout the year. So I guess I'm inviting you all to just, self-awareness is just about recognizing, how do you feel? Are the decisions that you're making right now supporting you? Or are they creating a kind of pressure or expectation? You might be feeling great. You're like, yes, I love you New Year's resolutions. They totally give me a bounce to my step. It's what I need. That's great. My invitation is, if at any point that enthusiasm begins to wane, that's okay. It doesn't mean that you're failing. It means that you are a human. You are a part of nature, and so your energy might ebb and flow, and that's okay. And can you just be aware of that? And then can you show up in a way that is supportive of yourself, that if your body is telling you, actually, you need to rest now, you're pushing too much, that you do that for yourself. And again, I think our modern society absolutely does not live in tune with the cycles and rhythms of nature. And so you might go, well, my job is really high pressured and I don't have the time to rest and relax. I have to constantly push forward. I have to be reaching for that upward curve. But then I guess my two invitations would be, in what other ways around that can you give yourself that time of rest, so that maybe that means your social calendar isn't as crazy, or whatever other expectations you might have for yourself, you turn the volume down a little bit and just give yourself more time, more space. It doesn't all have to be done now. And then maybe the greater invitation or question is, well, then is that the kind of life that you want to lead? Is that the job that you want to be in? Because, this goes into a whole other conversation, but are we living to work, or are we working to live? And we live in a modern society that things are really totally intertwined with economy, productivity, making money. And I think the interesting, sometimes unnerving, but also very exciting time that we're in right now is that people are starting to question, what has meaning to me? And you can kind of reach an existential crisis in that, but it's also really beautiful because we're breaking a mold that just might not actually be serving us anymore. Does our society function in a way that really supports us as human beings? We're not machines. We're not robots, right? We're not just linear and unchanging and, life just going in and out of the routine, doing something that feels meaningless to us. At the end of the day, that's not what on your deathbed you're going to go, that was great. The things that were great were, where did you live? Meaning, how did you live? I don't mean geographically, but how did you live? When were the moments that you felt alive and enlivened in your life? When did you feel connected to yourself, to the people around you, in your relationships, to nature, to life itself? I think we're really beginning to ask ourselves these questions. And so this is a really beautiful time where winter gives us that slowing down. The pace slows down, the energy slows down. We go inwards. It's giving us time to ask ourselves these questions. So it's not a time that we have to figure it out. As much as we would like to have it figured out. I mean, my God, I keep on asking for a certain kind of clarity because I feel like I'm at the precipice of wanting to start a new cycle. But sometimes we've got to wait. We've got to let it gestate. We've got to give it the time and space for it to, grow ever so slowly in the soil. And when it's ready to emerge, then it really can take growth. I mean, I watch my plants and it's really remarkable how quickly they grow. When they're ready to grow, it happens. It happens with ease. Again, there's no controlling the flower to grow in a certain way. There's just the nurturing and taking care of its environment. So my invitation again is just be self-aware around this. Really be in tune with yourself. Be in tune with the rhythms of nature. Are you going against it? Are you going against yourself even? Are you creating too much pressure and expectation and therefore stress and exhaustion? Or can you be, I've read this a lot lately, is like, steady wins the race. And not that I think that it's a race that needs to be won by any mean. It just doesn't mean anything to me. It's all an unfolding experience, but how do you want to be in that experience? And I think things like self-care and listening to ourselves and tuning into our heart are becoming incredibly important skills given the world that we're currently living in. So pay attention to yourself. Listen to yourself. Can you show up in ways that are supporting of what you're hearing and tuning in? What is your body telling you? What is your soul telling you, if you will, or your heart, or however you want to say it, whatever words resonate for you. Don't feel like you have to do it the way that society tells you should. It's just an opinion. It's not absolute. It's not the truth. Even what I say is not absolute and it's not the truth. The whole point is this isn't an invitation to listen to you. Listen to yourself. But just because something is done in a certain way doesn't mean that it's right. So I just so deeply encourage you to take care of yourself and to tune into what feels right. And you know what? If like one day or 1 week or 1 month, you're like, yeah, I have the energy and I have the motivation and I do feel extroverted and I do want to put things out into the world and I do want to work on that resolution and that feels good for you, then great. But if the next day or the next week or the next month, it doesn't feel that way, that's okay. There's no failure in that. That's just an ebbing. Right? And so that's a different cycle. And can you honor that? Can you listen to that? Oh, okay, now I need to go slower. I don't need to produce so much. I need to listen more. I need to meditate more. I need to breathe more. I need to contemplate more. I need to spend more time in nature. I need to be spending more time in deep connection with my friends or my partner or my children, or you know what I mean? Like, I think all we're being asked to do is to listen. But to listen, you have to slow down enough to pay attention. And then it's not just about listening. It's about, can you take action? Can you respond to the listening? Not just like, yeah, I hear you, but I'm going to ignore you and just keep, steaming ahead, not paying attention to actually what I'm asking of myself. Because our body is wise. Our soul is wise. Sometimes we don't have clarity about things in our lives, and that's okay. It will come. But normally our body's pretty good at telling us, I have energy, I don't have energy. I need to rest, or I need to, or I feel like being out there. But again, we've lived in a society that just really suppresses that and stampedes over it and just gives it no attention. So start paying attention. Let that be, well, I say the beginning of the new year, the new calendar year, but let it be a starting point, no matter what time of year we're at. But let it be a starting point, and just know if you're one that feels like, you know what, I don't want to do New Year's resolutions, I don't want to be outward and external, that's totally okay. You're probably just feeling the natural rhythms of nature, and that's great. You're in tune with that. So, yeah. Food for thought. Take it or leave it, as always. What resonates, what doesn't resonate, make it your own. It's all an invitation, and I'm loving you from afar. I want to just tag something on to the end of that, actually, because I was just reflecting on how for some people, they might actually have the opposite challenge, which is they are needing some kind of motivation. And it doesn't necessarily mean going into that like super yang, extroverted, need to do, get done kind of energy, but that there needs to be a little bit of a boost in energy because maybe they've fallen into stagnancy or depression or listlessness or whatever it is. So actually that motivation is needed and required and wanted. And maybe New Year's gives a little bit of a little bit of a kick in the butt. But then also it could be that there's the pressure for that, but not knowing how to. So what I want to say, if you're in that state, normally when we are in a place of either stagnancy or depression or laziness, and all we want to do is sleep, and it's beyond just the kind of, you can really ask yourself, is this just because I am matching the rhythms of nature and I need this time to rest and sleep more? Or is it that I am in a state of stagnancy and depression because things feel a bit dark or they feel a bit frustrating, or I'm like this even when it's not winter? Being really honest with yourself without any kind of judgment, but being really honest. Where's this coming from? And then the question is less about what, the goals might feel like too much of a pressure. The ticking things off your list and getting things done might be too great a leap. It might be too much, but there is this desire to have some kind of forward movement or momentum or just movement in general to get out of the stagnancy or the depression. The question that I would invite you to ask yourself is, what about my life right now is not making me feel alive? Because think of like stagnancy. Think about a puddle that has just been sitting there. It doesn't have any movement. And so I can say from my own experience, the times where I start to feel really down or I feel really frustrated is when I feel like there's no growth, there's no aliveness, there's no flow, there's no movement. There's something about my environment or my current life or whatever it is that is just not making me feel alive. And either it's, are you engaging enough, or it could just be that like you're in the wrong environment or you're in the wrong relationship or you're in the wrong job. And when I say wrong, I don't say that from the perspective of right and wrong, that someone will deem, has the authority to say that it's right or wrong, but does it feel right or wrong for you? The feeling. Does it feel good? Does it not feel good? Is it in resonance with you? Is it not in resonance with you? Is it authentic or not authentic? So that's what I mean when I say wrong. And so then it's really a reevaluation of what would make my spirit feel more alive? What would inspire me? What would bring me joy? What would bring me inspiration? How, in what ways do I want to grow? In what ways am I feeling stuck and I'm not growing? Why is that? Like, get curious about it. And often just kind of asking the questions from a place of curiosity, not judgment, it's like you stir the water a little bit in a good way to start to get things moving. You don't need to jump straight to the resolution or the goal and kind of go from 0 to 100 in 2 seconds. It's about just stirring the waters to create a little bit of movement to get out of that stagnancy. And really, I think depression is when it's like we are under the pressure of something that is keeping us stuck. Is when our spirit doesn't feel free, it doesn't feel enlivened, it doesn't feel engaged in life. And so the question is, where do I need to create that engagement? And sometimes that's a really hard question to answer in the moment. Sometimes it takes time. But ask it with curiosity and listen, tune in. Maybe the invitation is, are you, if you're numbing or distracting or transcending or ignoring whatever pain or boredom or listlessness or frustration or whatever is there underneath the surface, however close to the surface or deep down it's maybe been suppressed for a long time, start to really look at that, and if you're numbing and distracting, can the invitation be to stop doing that and actually just face it? Because if the desire is to feel more enlivened, you're going to have to stop suppressing the symptoms, because you need to actually get to the core of what's going on a deeper level so that you can really give yourself what you're needing. And then everything else it has a domino effect, it has a ripple effect, it can transform. But really the point is, am I feeling alive or am I not feeling alive? And if I'm not feeling alive, what are the things that I need to let go of? And what are the things that I need to cultivate? We're co-creators. Right? It's not just waiting for the universe to bring it to us. It's also, always the balance. It's not about overdoing, but it's not about not doing. The state of being is not a state of non-doing. It's actually a very much alive state of being. It's an alive experience. So it's not being so passive that we kind of go into victim role and give up and feel defeated. And it's like, yeah, life will do with me what it will, because we need to engage with it. It's a partnership, but it's also not over controlling it and being like, I need it to look like this and it should be like that, and having the expectation. You see what I mean? It's really the equilibrium, the balance of the two. So just ask yourself, how do I not feel alive, and what would enliven me? Let that be a starting point. Okay, loving you all from afar. Bye. You've been listening to Raw Conversations with Corinne Bloom. Thanks so much for showing up, listening in, and being a part of the conversation with me.